Hi there, I'm Simon Wallace. I'm one of the committee members of the Consultancy Specialist Group. Depending on what mode you've got Zoom in at the moment, you may be able to see also on your screen Alan Waugh, who is the chair of the Consultancy Specialist Group, and also Antonio Hidalgo, who is another committee member, and in particular, he's going to be looking after Zoom this evening, and in particular keeping his eyes on the chat to see what comments and questions are turning up. We also have James Lea, who is tonight's speaker. Tell me a little bit about James before he comes on. He is today talking about consulting and project delivery combining across disciplines. And I think there'll be some examples, case studies, some theory, engagements and exercises. So please do feel free to contribute. The easiest way to contribute is to put comments or questions into the chat, and we will pick those up during the talk, and James hopefully will respond to some of them. James is a consulting project and program manager and a fellow of the Association for Project Management, APM. And he's a regular presenter to us on BCS as well as APM and the science communities. He's published a range of articles, including AI in project management and keeping projects on track with data.
Simon, thank you very much for the introduction. I'd also like to give my thanks to Alan and Antonio as well, and the BCS Consultancy SIG. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have tonight. As Simon mentioned, I have been a member of the BCS and the APM for quite a few years, and also a fellow of the APM. So what I want to do in tonight's talk is to explore some of the topics around consulting and project delivery and the mindsets behind them. I'd like to have a look at the differences and commonalities and how to take that in a practical sense and how to combine that expertise to build anti-fragile teams. But most importantly, we are here to have fun. So I really do encourage you to share your thoughts. And I'm going to start my video. Thank you very much for letting me know in the chat, Alan. Thank you. So please do put your comments into the chat. We also have some Zoom polls coming along. For me, the challenge is, as I found throughout lockdown, and I'm sure you have as well, is how to get the engagement going. It is very difficult presenting to a video all the time. I absolutely love having a live audience. So tonight, let's do our best to build up that sense of belonging in the community and the environment. My story, like many of us, has taken quite a varied path. Back in the depths of time, I graduated with a degree in physics, and I've since done a master's degree in satellite communication engineering that I have never used, but I did enjoy doing the course. And I started my early career off working for PA Consulting. I founded my own business, Aerospace Scientific, quite a few years back, ran that for a few years, specialising in AI, and then moved on to working for another business, Pax's High Integrity Systems, where I really cut my teeth in the challenge of project delivery and consultancy. I then moved on to a couple of other organisations, Thales, CH2M Hill. But most significantly, I've been heavily involved in the APM, Association Project Management, and of course the British Computer Society. Now the key point here is that through this career path, I have combined consulting and project and programme delivery, and I've observed friction throughout that time. I've observed occasions where the consulting community don't seem to fully understand the project delivery community, and vice versa. So what I want to do in tonight's webinar is to explore some of those reasons, and I'd like you to start thinking about your own experiences and where you have found that friction arising. So the first part I want to cover in terms of mindset is, how do we see the world? Now, the older I get, the more I come to realise that how we see the world shapes the world, and our mindsets influence how we come across in our own professional lives. So I think this is a really important place to start. The question, of course, is that, do we see consulting and project delivery and project management as two separate disciplines to run alongside one another? Do we see them as an attempt to mix two immiscible fluids, or do we see them as perhaps something that we confuse and combine for the benefits of our clients and our teams? So I think it's wise to start off with some definitions. In all these matters, it's always good to be absolutely clear what we are talking about. So what is consulting? I particularly like Gerald Weinberg's view. It's the art of influencing others at their request. And from Peter Block, both for Flawless Consulting, you are consulting any time you are trying to change or improve a situation but have no direct control over the implementation. Okay, so I think we can probably agree those are two pretty robust definitions of consulting. But for project delivery and project management, the question is, well, what is a project? Well, it's taken from the APM Body of Knowledge, 7th edition. Project is a unique, transient endeavour which we undertake to bring about change and to achieve planned objectives. So we have a whole community of specialists in the field of project and programme portfolio management who are working alongside consultants. And their focus, of course, is on the delivery. So we come together in our professional lives to deliver services to our clients through teams. Very few of us work entirely alone. And so our teams have a mixture of specialists. So from a consulting angle, we may, of course, have solution architects, business analysts, system architects. We may have people specializing in database design, in the mechanics of database systems and cloud and AI. Then, of course, we have the project delivery specialists, the people like myself who are more strong in the project and program management, who also understand a great deal about project controls, project management office, finance and contract management. So I'm sure you'll recognize those roles, and there will be many others depending on your assignment and your client and your industry and your profession. And my professional history has mainly been at what I call digital construction. So I contrast that with physical construction in the sense that digital construction is something you cannot see. You cannot see computer code, you can see buildings and skyscrapers and bridges. So I think that is another unique challenge we have in the overlap between the work that the BCS does and the work the APM does. So we have this field of digital construction. And that in itself is a massive topic, very, very key to understand how data informs such projects. Now, I'd like to start off with a Zoom poll. So the consultancy team have kindly configured a Zoom poll, which I'd like to put to you, the audience, now to get us all going. And the question is, if you think about your own team, it can be a current project you're on, or it might be a fairly recent project. To what extent do you feel that your team understands and supports consulting versus project management, project delivery? Okay, on a scale of 1, no awareness, I hope a few of us are there, all the way to 10, exceptional, groundbreaking, highly innovative, shaping the industry. And if you could also, while you're doing that, perhaps suggest some reasons for any differences in the chat, and I'll start to pick up on those as we go through this webinar. Okay, thank you. So just if I can read out what we've got, in terms of understanding and supporting consulting, it's broadly a 6 out of 10, a bit of a spread up to 7, 8 and 9, a little bit of a peak down to a 3 even. That's really interesting. So that is for consulting. Now for project delivery, we have a similar peak at 6, actually stronger, and up to 7, 8, 9 and 10. They're actually very slightly stronger on the project delivery side than the consulting side. And you know what, that is really quite unexpected. That's a very interesting result. So we've had some comments come through in the chat, and thank you very much to John and to Paul for your thoughts. I'm going to address both of your comments in a moment as we go further into the deck, and regarding the value delivery and also what PM is trying to do. Are they trying to do too much or too little? And then we have a comment from Tim. So am I assuming a scenario in which a consultant is consulting to a specific software project? No, I'm not. I'm actually not specific software. This is flavoured though by the assignments I've been on. You will all have slightly different journeys. But thank you, everyone. Thank you. That's really, really great to get going on that. And it's to spread as well. I suppose the challenge we want to ask ourselves is, why is the peak only around 6? What is it that we can do as professionals to lift those scores? The 6, maybe we should be getting towards a 7 or to an 8. Thank you. So the observations I've had, and I think this partly comes back to your question, Tim, is that there are causes of friction between those who see themselves primarily in the consulting sort of function within a mixed project and those who see themselves in project delivery. And so some specific things I have heard over the years are, why do we need a plan when it keeps changing? What is the point in having a schedule if no one seems to stick to it, if it keeps moving and we can't stay on top of things? The other point, we need to demonstrate value now. We need to crack on. We just need to do it. Can we do agile? I hear the requests for agile very often. We need an XYZ role immediately. And then the contrast that with the project delivery, project management specialist, that focuses questions like, well, we need to form a baseline. What is a technical plan? How can I get that baseline together? If you guys, a consultant, won't tell me what it is I need to put into the schedule, please stop sending email attachments. Use the configuration management system that we and our PMO have put in place. Let's put quality into the ways of working. Why do we have another client briefing? Haven't we told them already? Didn't we send them a document that already covers that point? And how long did this take last time? What data do we have? And these are little sparks of friction that I see in many assignments over the years. There's kind of slight disconnect between the two, and this is what I want to explore in this webinar. So really, let's have a think about what the client wants. The client wants many things, including a predictable solution to their problem. And for me, the key word there, as well as solution to the problem, is predictable. And that is where the two parties can come together. And so clearly we need a combination, because those in the project management role, in project managers, program managers, project controllers, schedulers, so on, they don't fully understand what the solution is. Or there may be people who have been consultants in a more technical role, have moved up naturally into a project delivery role, and who have some awareness but not the deep understanding, if only because they lack the time in their day job to be able to go deep and fully understand what the consulting and technical teams are doing. So it's a real challenge. We've got to look at how we can achieve a workable combination. So in the second part of the webinar, what I'd like to try and do is have a look at some of the differences and commonalities. And I recently gave a talk to the APM on diversity, and as part of the preparation, I realised that diversity confers strength. So it's very important in the teams that we run that we value the diversity that is present in those teams. So the question, of course, is, when we are operating a team in a professional services engagement with a client, how do we properly understand the reactions of the team to different scenarios? How can we draw strength from the skills that certain individuals have and combine them effectively? This is a question that I pondered for a long time. And the solution I found is to develop a kind of aptitude matrix. It's a sort of a version of situational leadership model, but tailored to 30 questions, half of which are on consulting, the other half on project delivery. And the idea is to see where people naturally fall, where they tend to respond in particular ways to challenge, to client questions, supplier issues, how they see the world. And you'll see on the grid that I've shown on the right that I'm looking at a selection of people within the team, and I can see clusters of scores. I can see that certain individuals favour the consulting behaviours and others favour the project management and delivery behaviours. And that's fine, that's okay. But interestingly, as people become more experienced, they tend to cover off more bases. So I find that the staff who have fewer years of experience tend naturally to specialise in particular areas, and so they may rank a high score or green in one or two areas and less so in others. The more experienced people tend to cover more bases. And strangely, I think that actually causes some confusion in assignment, because you can get very experienced people who aren't quite clear on the boundaries of what they're trying to do. This comes back to your comment, Paul. As an architect and consultant, your experience at PM, try to do both roles themselves, and that can actually be a problem if they don't get it right. And I've seen the other thing happen where we have people in consultancy world less familiar with the toolkit that project managers may use to assure delivery, causing a difficulty too. So, having identified the kinds of aptitudes and preferences that people have in a selection of individuals, what I then found was if I clustered the attributes and list them, you will see two columns shown on the slide. The left-hand side, these are people who enjoy scoping the problem, they enjoy understanding the client dynamics, overcoming objections, they're great at naming resistance and fronting that to the client and to the team to say, these are things we need to address. They're great at developing the options for solutions, they can influence, they can communicate, they can explain why, which is often something we neglect to do, and they can adapt to change very quickly. And on the other side of this gentle incline, and you can see I've drawn a ball at the top of the hill, the question is which way did it roll? On the other side, you have the more project management delivery specialist aptitudes to establish a baseline, to understand how the work is going to be delivered, to choose the correct delivery methodology, whether that's agile, iterative, waterfall, hybrid, etc. And they are strong at estimating, they are strong at looking at the data from past performance and using that to understand future possibilities. And they're good at communicating with data, tracking to plans, and very importantly, identifying change. So if you hold that model in your mind, in your assignment, and see if you can start to characterize which way people tend to roll, and it's deliberately a gentle hill, it is deliberately a bit ambiguous, it's not quite clear which way, it's a pattern you see. But from developing this model, I came to realize that actually we have common cores. So what I want to do now is just to ask the second Zoom poll, this one's about center of gravity. So question to you is, when you're faced with a key moment of uncertainty, in a moment where perhaps with a client a major challenge has come up and it's a hot topic, it's come up in the meeting, the team has a feeling that it needs to respond quickly, who shouts loudest? Are they the consulting voices or the project delivery voices? And option, if you can, in the Zoom chat, suggest why. Antonio, could you run the poll, please? Thank you. So can everyone see the results? That project delivery tends to shout loudest at 69% and consulting 35%. Now, again, that's really interesting. And the comments that have come through, thank you very much to those of you put in some comments there around trust. So if I can just pick up on the comment from Simon, it depends who is most trusted by the customer. And the second comment on depends on who talks to the client more directly. Actually, really interesting. But in project delivery, on the other hand, because they manage budgeting the resources and they have to deal with the fallout once a project is implemented. I love that phrase, fallout. There should be no real fallout, but I get it, I've been there. So you're right, the PM is how to account. And there are comments from Gary, rightly or wrong, the PM is often measured in their ability to deliver the plan, so it's likely to get most emotional when the plan turns out to be undeliverable. Gary, I'm going to come back to that point. That's a very interesting point. So thank you very much, everyone. That's really, really interesting. I encourage you at a piece of work or a meeting with a customer, when you have such a key moment, a decision moment, to have a think about who is shouting loudest and ask the question, should the voices be 50-50? Should it actually be that the consulting and delivery, so the consulting and technical staff should be having an equal weight to the project management staff? Have we got the balance right? So what I'm going to do now is just move on and suggest to everyone that in fact The reason why that 50-50 model is so important is because we have common cause. This whole game is around making predictions. So to one side of the hill, we have consultants who are shaping the scope. They're asking the questions of what, why, how are we going to do this? They're deeply immersed in what has to be built in the product. And the project delivery around shaping the time, cost, budget, risks, and the other points he raised. And they are very focused on when, where, who. But actually, both groups need strong foundation to make reliable forecasts and to be able to deliver smoothly. And that is where I asked the question, to what extent does one party dominate proceedings? Now, I think that really we need to get that balance absolutely right, and that those responsible for the consulting side of an assignment, those responsible for the delivery side, should have equal levels of trust with the customer. Now, Tim has just raised an interesting point here, that perhaps consultants tend to shout because they don't want to be responsible for any ultimate disasters. Well, there shouldn't be. See, if the project delivery specialists are doing their job, they should be making sure there are no ultimate disasters, because they will be there challenging the consultancy part of the team to make sure they are forming credible, reliable and robust solutions. What I want to do now is just take a look at how we can take some of this thinking and use it to build anti-fragile teams. Now, there's an author called Taleb who I strongly encourage you to read his books, absolutely fascinating, Followed by Randomness, Black Swan, Anti-Fragility and others. And anti-fragility is a beautifully simple idea. If you take a wine glass and you drop it on the floor, it will shatter. The question is, what's the opposite? What is the complete opposite of something which is fragile? And Taleb found that he couldn't find a word that was suitably close enough to the concept he sought. So he came up with the idea of anti-fragile. And I absolutely love it. It's something that's really taken me. The idea is that we need to try and build teams in our professional lives that get stronger with challenge. And in a way, that's what's motivated me to give this webinar, is to ask that very question with us: what can we do to help make our teams actually not just robust, but anti-fragile and get stronger in response to challenge? And so some of the comments that you have kindly put into the chat are things that we can seize on and learn from to help strengthen our teams. Now, diverse teams are represented in this slide by individuals, which like a Venn diagram arc, who overlap in the core. The core represents the core skills the project needs to deliver, the assignment, and then the sections that extend outwards represent their unique skill set, what it is that they bring to the party that we should all be aware of. And if we have that suitable diversity in the team, but with enough common cause, we can build a team that responds positively to challenge and indeed becomes anti-fragile over time. To get there, we need to understand people's CVs and their life stories. Now, I have a life story. It would take me hours to go through all the experiences that have shaped me. And I'm sure the same for everyone here on this call. And therefore the same for everyone in our teams, that we have a hidden CV. It is literally the tip of an iceberg. And that CV shapes our viewpoint. It shapes how we choose to react to different situations, what our natural inclinations are, whether we see ourselves in the consulting side, shaping the solution, or whether we see ourselves in the time side and the delivery side. We all have different backgrounds, but we need to make sure that we understand that in our teams. Now, as part of that, we have very specific skills. So those skills, I think all parties need to recognise and understand. Now, I'm guilty of this, not taking the time to understand everyone else in my team and what they have to offer. I slowly work it out by observing how people respond to different situations, and nearly always afterwards I think to myself, I missed a trick. I should have taken the time to go and have a beer with that person and to really find out what it is that makes them tick. So for me, in my project and program delivery world, I'm very much focused on the project toolkit. So the kinds of charts you see there on the screen represent earned value management, the ability to understand whether we're getting what we wanted for the spend. And there's a whole industry in there in terms of EV, EVM, which I encourage you to read up on. There's also the concept of tracking evolution of forecasts in time, the milestone trend chart, where you can plot the change of a predicted date over time. And horizontal lines that intersect that red diagonal line are good, and lines that slope up indicate slips, lines that come down indicate things moving to the left or being delivered early. Now, that's a hugely powerful tool. And the question, of course, is how much of the consultancy influence people understand that the project people have these tools at their disposal to enable delivery and to make sure that we're not in the situations where we have fallout when the project is implemented. We're not in situations when the plan turns out to be undeliverable, because the project staff have obtained all the information they need from the consultancy members to build really robust estimate plans from which they can predict, measure, control. And they use techniques like product breakdown structure, work breakdown structure. They'll ensure quality and systematic delivery, and they will be in the game of forecasting the outcome, which should be in terms of the quality, the benefits, scope, and the costs, and of course the risks as well, and opportunities, providing early warnings, maintaining really strong control of scope. And I would say in a nutshell, it's all about the art of the likely. So those are the skills that the project delivery community tend to coalesce around. By contrast, the consulting community are very interested in how we engage with customers, understand what they're seeking. So we have a range of techniques and understanding of different question styles, ways that we can hold the attention, using cues to maximize the attention over time, quarter chain process, how we can open and close a diamond, open, close all the way through an assignment. We're great at building cultural assessment and diagnosis checklists, like the aptitude matrix I showed you earlier. And we should also be really good at active listening and making sure that we have really got to the bottom of what the client is saying through interviews, handling resistance, and adapting our leadership style based on different situations. So there's a whole range of skills now that the consultants have. Now, my challenge to the group is, how do we combine those? How do we make sure that the project staff understand how the consulting staff are going about their work? And just as important, how the consulting staff are engaging with the project staff and bringing them in. So, for example, if perhaps in an interview it becomes apparent that the scope of a project is at risk, then are they able to bring in the project delivery staff to make sure that actually that is being managed? Now, I had what I called a real fantastic personal win very recently, when a member of client staff came to me after a really important call and said, I was in this meeting, but I declined to give confirmation because I knew that this could be scope change and I wanted to get your view. And for me, that was a huge win, because it shows that I had, at least in that case, managed to coach the client, help them to understand why the project delivery skill sets are just as important as the consulting skill set, to make sure that we could then bound our project tightly, hold the scope, and deliver. Now, I've just had a question come through. Tim, you've asked a question, could I expand cultural assessment? So this is around the catch-all term for understanding the organisation's styles, the organisational culture, making sure we understand how they think. May include things such as assessment of whether they're a department-based organisation or a matrix or project-oriented, and seeing how that affects the ability to deliver, the ability to influence change, influence the staff of the client organisation. So, what I'd like to do now is just try a third, this is the final poll we have this evening, the third poll on skills. So, given the description I've given in consulting and project delivery, could you enter into the poll how well equipped you feel your team is with the skills for consulting and project delivery, and any reasons for variance, and do you have the right mix for your assignment. Thank you. So the scores are in. For a scale of 1 to 10, how well equipped is your team for skills for consulting? We have what looks like a bimodal distribution. We have a peak around 3 to 4, and then we have a possible second peak around 7 to 8. So I'm a little cautious about reading too much into that on account of the number of votes, but that does look interesting. And then in terms of project delivery, we have a slightly stronger rating at the 4, but then again, a distribution right up to the 10. So I would contend that data is showing me that across our community, we have a preference, slightly stronger skill set in consulting than we do in project delivery. On the other hand, project delivery extends right up to 10, whereas consulting does not. So could I just ask you, the audience, please, could you in the Zoom chat suggest the reasons for variance? Do you feel that you have the right mix for your assignment? Issue that project management has become increasingly focused on managing processes, not content. Yes, I get that. Isn't difficult to teach, but the thinking is, yeah, that's a good point. That is a very good point. That is, in fact, if I could go back to my friction slide, I would put that in as a cause of friction between consulting and project management communities, is just that point that sometimes the PMs are saying, well, this is what we need to do to control change, and the consultants are going, get on with it. We don't need to wait. We know what the answer is. And the PMs are saying, no, we have a process we need to follow. The trouble is, what I found, is that if you don't follow the process, later on it comes to bite you, and you just carry that additional bit of risk that if the client says, well, why is it taking longer than you said it would 3 months ago, you don't perhaps have the audit trail to be able to point back to and say, well, on this occasion, this is the impact assessment that we diligently filled out. But I do get that point. That's a really good point. And then we've had a comment from Paul about very few organisation consultancy training. Yes, I would agree with that. I have worked with teams that are consultants, but in name, but don't necessarily have all the training that you would expect them to have. And I think that ties back to a comment raised right at the beginning of this webinar when someone noted that consulting can be seen as a way of getting people in quickly, regardless of the value they offer. So pile them high, sell them cheap might be a less complimentary way of putting it. But yes, I recognise that. We had another comment. Consulting is innovation orientated, and PM approaches the better for more familiar areas of business development and change. So my challenge would be that, is project management anti-innovation? And there are techniques for very extreme styles of project management where you can actually cope with radical change, and you can pivot quickly, and you can recognise the uncertainty up front and be clear about that with the customer right at the beginning. But you're right, the mainstream project management has a sense of a more traditional, robust sort of Prince 2, this is how we do it. Can it be sufficiently agile in the modern world? I had another comment about we need to get the mix, and it depends on the maturity of the relationship between the client, project manager and the consultant. Now, if I could just take a slight tangent here, one of the topics that always concerns me in building up a project team is getting the right dynamics between some of the senior team members and from then on to the client. And I think that's the point that Alex, you are raising there about the maturity of that relationship. I think it's very important that all three in that triangle, that the client, project delivery specialist and the consulting specialist or technical lead specialist all have an equal part to play. We need to get the mix, and it depends on the maturity of that relationship. I think it's very important that all three in that triangle, that the client, project delivery specialist and the consulting specialist all have an equal part to play. We need to get the mix, and it depends on the maturity of that relationship. I think it's very important that all three in that triangle, that the client, project delivery specialist or technical lead specialist all have an equal part to play. And then from Clive, we've had a comment about the tricks for project delivery to keep pace in an agile model. Yes. Yes. By EQ, I think we're talking about emotional quotient here rather than intelligence quotient. Absolutely. So that is that empathy is all important. Now, when I was constructing the aptitude matrix and I showed earlier, I was debating about whether to include some of these things in that. And I came to the view that they ought not to correlate with consulting or project delivery division, because that EQ is important for all staff in professional services delivery. But I get your point, thank you. So what I'm going to do now is just move on. What I want to do is say, look, we recognise the diversity, we recognise the challenges, we recognise the organisational issues and the need for the right training, but we have a lot of common cause, and I encourage everyone to seek common ground. And I have to routinely on my assignments try and take a step back and make sure that I'm training and briefing the people in the team and the client staff and their suppliers and the stakeholders and everyone on how we are going about the work and being clear about our common cause. And of course, the consulting mantra is how we deliver matters as much as what we deliver. And I think the project management and the consulting communities really need to come together on that and to get that common understanding of skills they require. And by doing that, can control uncertainty. The consultant can acknowledge some of the extreme projects, the highly innovative projects that we are asked to run, and come together with the project community to find the best way of delivering. And so at the beginning of an assignment, it's really worth having a stage where you are open with the question is, what delivery methodology should I use? And it is okay to change that methodology as you go through the project. And it is okay to have some parts of a project waterfall, some parts hybrid, some parts agile. You can mix it all up. And you can be really clear with people about how the project staff are helping the consulting staff overcome all the ambiguity and the challenge that they have, so that we all come together and gain strength through the challenge. We need to build in an engineered tension. Now, this might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but actually it's integral, absolutely integral to building a high-performing team, is that the team is locked-tight, understands its skills, acting as one, and we're very slightly pulling different directions, but that doesn't matter. As long as the views are being expressed, that the voices are equal, we're not having an overabundance of the consulting voices, the project delivery voices, everyone gets who are acting in lockstep, then it's the collective outcome is what matters. And I would contend that if there is no tension, then the diverse perspectives are not being brought into bear. I have a typo on my slide there. We need to talk the talk and walk the walk. So if the team have to behave consistently, we have to do what we say we will do. That can be hard at times. And of course, communication energy is so important. You've got to keep the positive engagement with the team, put energy into the rhythm dynamics, and bring the consulting and project management staff together, helping to see common cause. Now, I can see, Tim, you've raised another question, and there might be a big difference depending on whether the consultant is engaged by the project team or its customer. It's an interesting point. Yes, I think you're right. It depends whether the consultant is being brought in by the project team and being surfaced and visible to the customer, or whether the customer is directly putting in the consultant as part of the project team. My preference would be to be open with the customer about who you are bringing into the assignment and what role they're going to play, and to be transparent. I think in the long run that absolutely pays dividends. So what I want to do I'm allowing some time for questions here. I know this webinar is scheduled for up until 8 o'clock. It's just gone 7:20, but I deliberately want to allow some time for questions, a bit of a Q&A and dialogue. But before we get there, I just wanted to sort of suggest a checklist, the things that you might take away from this webinar and use to apply back in the day job. And the first thing, of course, as always, is to listen, to seek diversity, to actively try and find the hidden skills that we have, and to look at the consulting skills, looking at the project delivery skills, surface them, get them on the table, almost write them down in post-its and just show them around the team so everyone can see the skill sets and the aptitudes and the backgrounds everyone's got, and be open about how we like to respond to challenge. And that then helps us to pick up each other's tools of the trade. And I always find the assignments I enjoy the most are the ones where I am learning something from other people in my team, tweaking my approach, getting better at delivery, getting better at consulting. And of course, we need to engage the whole team in continuous learning and reinforcement. And as part of that, it's very important to practice the driving the change back into the ways of working. It's all too easy to have a lessons learned activity where we say, well, okay, we might have got the scope control correct there, but we missed this, and we need to do better next time. And such a sentiment does not survive contact with the enemy. And next time, the same thing will happen. And what really we need to do is to drive lessons back into our ways of working, and then to follow our ways of working. And this is where I particularly like the idea of having an active, dynamic quality management system, which is not something that you draw down and blow the dust off once in a blue moon, but rather something you're constantly using, constantly drawing upon. And this is where case studies are really useful in the organisation to say how we did it last time and what worked well and what we can do better next time. And of course, we need to celebrate wins and reinforce success. It is very easy, I find, in a lessons learned activity for people to naturally just have a moan the whole way through, and you come to the end and you feel quite sad. I think it's better to say, I'm going to challenge everyone to give you 1/3, you have a budget, 1/3 things that went well, and 2/3 of things that actually, yeah, let's do better next time. So, coming back to this graphic, my view is that consulting and project delivery are entirely complementary. And if we do our job right, then we combine the skill sets for the benefit of our client, and we give our client predictable delivery of the desired solution. It's entirely complementary, but it is up to us to understand what each of the colours in that diagram represent and how we can mix and combine them and adapt them throughout the life of the project. So in conclusion, consulting and project delivery are complementary, diverse, but they have common cause. Let's build on them both. So thank you. What I'd like to do now is to open the floor a little bit and just to have a bit of a dialogue on some of the points, and I'd be grateful for feedback from you, my audience, to what parts of this webinar resonated with you, which things you think you found useful and could apply back in your professional lives. And I think in terms of how we share, we have the chat, but also, as Simon mentioned, if you're willing to come on camera or at least voice, that is welcome too. Thank you.
So you need to attract our attention in any way you choose to do so. We will plug you in. There is the hand raising facility, or you can say something on chat, or you can just wave frantically and hope that we're watching you on the video. At the moment, if you turn your video on, we'll probably spot you. Tim just turned his video on. Tim, are you hoping to speak to us? Or at least you just came up on my screen.
No, well, I was hoping to speak in due course after I brought my thoughts together, but I thought I'd make myself more present. I think we've all got lots of different experiences with consultancy, and and this is very diverse. For example, my own experience has been mostly with consulting to the European Commission and the DTI, so it's government based. But I've done one or two other pieces of consultancy. Well, one was the Electrical Research Association, which is a kind of association of companies which are willing to pay a subscription to share research done by the ERA, the Electrical Research Association. And I was consulting to them some time ago about the year 2000 problem. But with the European Commission and the DTI, I was quite often asked to go and look at projects that they were funding. They were all multi-company, multi-organization projects, which looked as if they might be faltering in some way. And so I would be sent at the behest of the DTI or the European Commission to inspect those projects and report back. And this involved getting the confidence and the trust of the projects and getting the truth of what was going on, but also at the end of the day, what they wanted was the project to be successful. So advising them on what to do next. So, but I can see that there are lots of different scenarios of different consultants. But before I was working for myself, I was working in a software house, and I did internal consultancy to projects that were going on and helping those along their way. And that's another kind of scenario. So the point I'm making is really just that we've got lots of different experiences and shouldn't make assumptions that everyone else has got similar scenarios to ourselves. And I'm retired, which means the work that I do, I don't get paid for. I still do quite a bit of work on a sort of voluntary basis. Yeah, that's all. Let me stop.
So, Tim, thank you very much, and great to hear your background and where you've worked. And I've learned something just from listening to what you were saying, and I'm starting to imagine being involved in the European Commission, you know, at the behest of the DTI. I'm starting to get that, and I'm starting to think, you know, how would those teams work? So you mentioned about successful delivery of projects. Did you find that the consulting side of that work was adequately informing the project management side? Did it all come together as the client expected?
I think the most important thing that happened was to improve the communication between the client, which was either the European Commission or the DTI, and the supplier, which was it was usually a group of organizations, you know, up to half a dozen, in those times there was a great urge to have academia and industry working together, so they were the kind of half academic, half industrial organizations, and they would have their own internal management, which quite often was quite awkward to deal with. But once I explained to them how their supplier of funding actually worked internally and showed them what they needed, which was evidence that progress was being made, deliverables and that sort of thing, that they weren't just formalistic things that they had to produce. Things usually improved and got on.
Good. Good. So you're able to bring in there some of the project delivery capability to help the customer understand the dependencies and the complexity of the work. So, yeah. Tim, thank you very much. Could I now come to a further comment that's been raised by Alec, saying that the main takeaway for you is to ensure that both sides work in tandem, totally agree, in an open and honest way, presenting a single voice to the client. In fact, I wish I'd had that on my slide earlier. It was absolutely spot on. And it's interesting, the adoption of agile methods and techniques support this, although not all clients or businesses are ready or willing to engage in that way. I think you're absolutely right. I observe that the deployment of agile I've done agile is software development and it works in particular circumstances, but this is not an excuse for failing to plan. We still need to have the overall plans that inform the agile assignment. So I completely agree that not all clients or businesses are ready to necessarily have the maturity to be able to work in that way. Thank you. And John, you've asked the question, do we have any good resources to help with consultancy, checklists, template documents, case studies, examples, or websites? Well, there's a lot. From my professional perspective, obviously there's a BCS and the resources the BCS has. I'm also being a member and a fellow of the Association for Project Management. The APM website has a huge amount of information there. I will type in the address so that you've got it. It's apm.org.uk. If you take a look at that, then they have lots of materials that may help in combined project consulting delivery.
James, Paul Stevens has his hand up. I think he would like to talk.
Yes, I was going to just tell you very briefly. I work for a large international utility, have done for 25 years. I primarily do architecture work, but I have done consultancy as well. 10 years ago or more, I did it was some training for IT consultancy. It was like a boot camp for a week, followed by a 3-hour written examination and then a 1-hour oral. Probably one of the toughest examinations I've ever done. I don't use the techniques now, but the thing I learned from that was that the consultant and the architect are involved quite heavily at the beginning. That's where probably about 80% of my time is. And then basically I have to trust the project manager to actually pick that up and only come back to me if there are changes and exceptions. And also to come back to say when the project's delivered. So that's how I found I work well with project managers.
Yes.
They recognise that handover. I'm there at the beginning to do a lot of the work, and then they pick it up as a project. I don't know if that's your view.
So again, probably you've raised a really, really good point. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the time phase nature of assignments and the projects. So what you described there sounds to me like the business recognised the importance of having the high quality input at the beginning to forming the plans so that the project manager has a fighting chance of delivering the work as promised and set out, with obviously the agreement that they come back to you should there be change or uncertainty that they can't address. And that's part of a more general pattern, which is the inexperienced project delivery or project managers tend to leave all the exciting things to the end and have lots of fun right at the end trying to finish the job, whereas the most experienced ones ask all the hard, difficult, risky, awkward questions at the beginning, and they drive out all the uncertainty as early as possible. So I think there is an argument here for us as a community, as a group, to make sure that our voices are being heard at the beginning, right at the beginning of an assignment. In fact, so early before it's even been run during the bid stage. And that is something else that I drive within the project community, is to question, are you getting data from past assignments to inform the bids, so that when you are given a project to work, you are confident the business knows it can be done. So Paul, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's Gary Lloyd has his hand raised as well, I see now.
Hi, James. Thanks very much.
Hi.
If I just could figure out how to take my my hand down, lower hand. There we go. I was going to say It struck me that one of the things you didn't talk about in your talk was value, and I think
Yes.
that's where the common ground should be, and it should be easy. Well, I would say easy to identify that, but value to the customer. And I think that one of the problems goes back to my previous comment, which is one of the problems I found with as project management is evolved. When I first started, it was about delivering value, and there's a lot of box ticking going on, lots of charts and box ticking going on, which the consultants then, where there's a conflict is where the consultants want to do something which is perfect. If you take somebody that's building a quantitative model or something like that for a derivatives exchange, something that I've encountered, they want to get it right. Now, if they're both measured on delivering value and rewarded on delivering value, then that's where I think the common ground lies, because I think that the project management community can get trapped into delivering one of two things, which is delivering the plan, or both things, delivering the plan and delivering a specification. Now, that specification might not deliver value if they explore it in an intelligent way, and the consultants are often gonna know that, and they'll be sitting moaning in the corner because they say, well, this is not really going to do the job. And so that's where I think some of the conflicts lie, and that's where I feel that the way through it, I'm repeating myself now, is through value, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and you're quite right. It's ultimately all change is about delivering desired change to the customer, as you say, the value, and it's definitely an area of conflict. And I probably deal with most days is some of the consulting community aiming for perfection. And I heard a really great definition of perfection a few years back, which is exactly what the client wants, no more, no less, and getting people to understand there are trade-offs in time and cost and scope, hence value. There's a technique I've seen used as well, which is house of quality, which I found quite interesting. I think it's more or less a similar idea to value, but making sure that everyone in the team gets what is necessary, no more, no less. And I do see quite often project management community are can be quite good at chairing meetings and trying to get people to finish and limit the scope of a meeting. And there's something in there as well. I think if the consultant and project management people can come together and get that value right, as you say, that does sound like a path through. Thank you.
Think, James, sorry, can I just jump in for a quick bite? I don't know, have you come across the Lost Planner system?
The Lost Planet system? I haven't, no.
Lost Planner system.
I haven't, no, I will look it up.
It's just, I came across it by accident when I did some work for a construction company, and it comes out of the Lean Management Institute. I didn't discover it. Sorry, not the Lean Management Institute, the Lean Construction Institute. There's something that's really interesting, which is that some techniques came from construction into software development. And in the meantime, construction woke up and said, well, this isn't really working very well. What can we learn from lean thinking? And it's really a third alternative to what I'm familiar with, which is either Scrum or Kanban. And if you haven't come across it, there's some really good videos online, and it's worth investigating.
Fantastic, Gary, thank you. Would you mind, just while we continue this conversation, typing in that link or the title into the chat, please, then we can all catch it. Thank you. Thank you. So, may I ask, are there any other questions? Is there anything that I haven't followed up on that's been put into the chat?
Hi, James. I see nothing else in the chat, and I don't see any standing hands up. So at the moment, I don't see anything else.
Okay, well, look, I would say, if anyone wants to carry on the conversation, there are some links there. I'm happy to carry on the conversation. But I've really enjoyed tonight. It's been absolutely great to hear from you all and get your views on this, and it shapes my thinking as well. So I would update this presentation based on some of what has been said, and I want to say thank you all very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you for taking part in the polls and for all your contributions. Really very much appreciated. Thank you. I'm going to hand back now to Simon, I think.
Well, indeed, thank you very much, James. That was a really interesting session, and there was lots of great interaction on chat and in some of the live comments there. Excellent stuff. We will, as promised, have a recorded version of this up on the BCS YouTube site, and we'll be sharing the links to that and the slide pack. Hopefully, in about a week's time, that will be ready, and you'll be able to see the replay, not just of the video, but we'll also replay through those meaningful chat comments. Lots of wonderful stuff there. It's been really good. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for staying with us. And I do hope we'll see you again for our next event on the 22nd of April, Consultancy and Green IT, or even better, come along to the second episode of How to Be a Consultant on the 28th of April. But thank you all very much. That's it for tonight. So I wish you all and enjoy your dinner. Good night.
Thank you.